So amid all the fiscal cliff talk, the president has tried to sort of move into place a new Secretary of State named Susan Rice, the current United Nations ambassador,
Yes.
and that has not gone so well.
No, it definitely has not. We saw this week the White House and Susan Rice decided they were going to put her out there to meet with members of Congress who had been hammering her, Republicans, John McCain, Senator Lindsey Graham, and now a couple of women as well. So it's not just the guys who are ganging up on her. So that's a shift for them. And it kind of backfired. Everyone emerged and said that they had more concerns than they did before. And so now there's all these questions about whether the White House had walked into some kind of a trap and what this might mean for her going forward. But still, generally inside the White House, she's the front runner. She's the president's top choice. He defended her again yesterday in a cabinet meeting and said that he thought she was extraordinary and applauded her.
And all the concerns, at least the publicly expressed concerns, rotate around this incident in Benghazi and whether in the aftermath of that she essentially misled the American people on talk shows by saying this was a spontaneous demonstration that killed the ambassador, not a premeditated al-Qaeda terrorist attack, which to Americans must seem like a kind of a strange, arcane thing on which to have such a big fight. But in this town, it's become the subject of this entire conversation.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because, I think it's two things. One is, I do think that they suspected all through the fall, and you guys both saw this, that there was going to be a political game played with policy in some fashion, and that they thought that there was a genuine attempt by the White House to mislead people on what happened in Benghazi, because the White House line was, we've conquered al-Qaeda, not that we're now at risk from al-Qaeda. But I also think, secondly, that this is an area where I think they can assert some influence, and the Senate has always taken the Secretary of State choice seriously. By the way, there's one of their own that a lot of them would like to be in that job. It's John Kerry of Massachusetts. And maybe they feel this is one point where they have leverage over Barack Obama in an environment which they've lost leverage elsewhere.
Well, I think that's right, and I think that for Barack Obama now, he's on a limb. At his news conference after the election, he defended and stood up for Susan Rice in a very personal way. He made it a mano-a-mano thing. He said, you know, this is my nominee. I'm the one. You want to pick on anyone, pick on me, pick on someone your own size, he was saying to Lindsey Graham and John McCain. So Obama can't really back off this limb now. I mean, he's sort of on the hook, and he's got to go forward with Susan Rice. And I think if he does and he succeeds, I think he gains some political capital that he might be able to play out later in the term.
And what about in general? Are we going to have months and months of back and forth on confirmations? He's going to have to nominate a new Treasury Secretary. There's holdovers from the first term that confirmation hasn't gone through. Are we going to be through that?
Well, here's my question with regard to that, and this is something you and I spoke about earlier, but does Congress want to seem obstructionist? Do they want to seem like they have a positive agenda, or do they want to seem like they're just blocking what Barack Obama is trying to do? I mean, their approval rating has dropped down to single digits. We're just coming off an election. Setting up for the 2014 midterms, doesn't Congress want to show that they're more a productive partner in some of these problems that
right. No, I think that's a good point. I've sensed that from some members of Congress, they're not happy with the fact that they spent 2 years basically not getting anything done, and they realize that that's putting them at risk.
But I think that view is more widely felt in the Senate than in the House.
But that's where the confirmation stuff
That's true, but that's not where the fiscal cliff deal is going to get done.
Correct.
So it may be, you may be right, that in the confirmation game, maybe people in the Senate say, you know, look, we're supposed to be statesmen here, so let's behave ourselves. And so maybe they've picked out Susan Rice, and the rest of what the president wants to do will go more smoothly.
Right, and if you've noticed the senators who've come out and spoke against Susan Rice, so firstly are ones who are kind of the old guard. I mean, you're not seeing like a Marco Rubio or somebody who's got potential for higher office.
That's because he's trying to figure out how old the Earth is. Marco Rubio, he's preoccupied.
But so Treasury Secretary is the next big one on the list, and everybody seems to think Jack Lew, currently the White House Chief of Staff, is going to get the job. Would that be a controversial pick?
I don't know. That's what I'm wondering. I mean, there are some people in the Congress who don't like him. Apparently, he rubs some people the wrong way and thing. But on the other hand, and he did work at Citigroup, so I could imagine things that people would say. But are they not going to let the president have any of his nominees?
But don't you think This president has had great trouble with the business community in terms of winning allies in
Right.
business. And as you mentioned, he's brought a lot of CEOs, business people into the White House since the election. Wouldn't it make a statement that he wants a rapprochement with business if he appoints someone who comes from the Wall Street world? I mean, as opposed to going with someone like Jack Lew, who's kind of a Washington figure.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, that's why I think the name of Larry Fink, who's the head of BlackRock, continues to be in the mix, because he would fit that bill, and his firm didn't have a whole lot did a lot dirty during the crisis. So I think it's a possibility. My sense is, though, and this is really in the gut thing, is that the president really wants somebody he can trust in that job. I mean, he clearly has a very good relationship with Geithner, and presumably has a good relationship with Jack Lew, and to him that may be.
He thinks
what
very
matters.
highly of
Yeah,
Lew.
there's only a handful, less than a handful of his cabinet members that he meets with regularly and feels close with and likes to have a chemistry with, and Treasury would be one of those people. I think,
Right.
Peter, in terms of what you were saying, he could check that box elsewhere. I mean, he's talked about this
Oh, I see,
grand
right.
idea of having him Secretary
Right.
of Business or something like that. But there's commerce, there's other places where he could appear
That's
as
right.
if he's embracing the
But this
business
is an important
community a little
question.
bit more.
The SEC chairmanship is up, and it's not clear what's going to happen there. There's probably a number of other spots that we haven't realized are going to be open. These are, Panetta is 74 years old. He's talked about wanting to go back
Leaving
to
the Pentagon.
California.
That's right.
So there could be a lot of change.
Well, by next week, we might have the answers to some of those personnel questions, and maybe we'll be closer to that fiscal cliff. Probably will be. But anyway, we'll talk about it all next week on DC Bureau. Hope you can join us. Meantime, you can join the conversation on Twitter at #WSJLive. I'm Jerry Saga.